Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsey, and as always, I have the pleasure of being joined by my Saratoga-loving partner, Matt Shipman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm terrific, Brian. I'm looking forward to doing the show about the Travers.
The Travers Show. Yes, we are going to break down, we are going to analyze. It's going to be an anatomy of an upset, as you know, as American Pharoah, the Triple Crown champion, the first Triple Crown winner in 37 years, went down in defeat at the Graveyard of Champions. That is Saratoga, his first defeat in 9 races. Matt, we're going to break this down. First part of the race, second part, third part, and fourth part. Let's get right to it. As they broke from the gate, there was no real rush. The first quarter, as talked about on NBC Sports, was not extremely fast. They threw down a 24-1. American Pharoah was able to get to the lead from his inside post position, but Frosted laid a little bit close as they went into the first turn.
Yeah, everything looked to be as usual as the race began. Nice, comfortable pace. I looked at the fraction, a 24 and change. American Pharoah had about a length lead, and looked like he was well on his way to a comfortable win.
Victory number 9 beckoned, but that was early on. Frosted, were you surprised at all that Frosted was the one that was closest early?
Yeah, I was surprised. What I was most surprised in is that Texas Red was not close to what was happening. As I said before the race, I figured that the Texas Red connections had to be thinking the same thing that Lescano was thinking, especially on the heels of his front running or close to front running win in the Jim Dandy.
Yeah, Texas Red actually was ahead of Frosted early for most of the race in the Jim Dandy. Not today. That was kind of a theme for Texas Red's Travers, though, unfortunately for him, Matt. He never really got into the race. He did carry Keen Ice wide on the first turn, as Javier Castellano did get Keen Ice involved in the race a little bit more. He was pretty close to the leaders, American Pharoah and Frosted, on the first turn. Got pushed out a little wide, so he fell just a little farther back. But Keen Ice was never too far back, as he has been in some of his previous races.
Right. He never got farther behind than sixth place. And in that sixth place, he was not particularly far behind.
Yeah, so that early eagerness probably showed us that Keen Ice, who we knew was a threat, he had run a good Belmont, third in the Belmont. He had run a very good Haskell to rally for a clear second in the Haskell. He's a horse that's developing, getting better, but the fact that he was able to lay a little bit closer early probably was a sign that he was on the muscle this day at Saratoga.
Yeah, and as I've said often, getting a rider change to Javier Castellano frequently improves the performance of a horse.
Nothing wrong with jumping on Javier or vice versa. Castellano is one of the best, especially at Saratoga. So yeah, Keen Ice was in good shape as they headed into the backstretch. And then as they went into the backstretch, slowly but surely, Frosted started to say, hey, I'm not going to let you get away with an easy lead. I'm not going to let you get away with an easy pace. It was not the easiest kind of pace that we thought it might be after the first quarter mile for American Pharoah.
No, it absolutely wasn't. And as you so eloquently wrote, Brian, in your article, your recent article on Horse Racing Nation, the pace really began to pick up as they headed down the back stretch. And it isn't, with horse racing, it isn't so much just the fractions. It's the fact that you have a horse right on your hip. And jockeys know that. Horses can sense that from their jockey, and horses know when they have a competitor right on their hip. So at that point, everything changed.
Everything changed. Frosted wasn't completely nose and nose with American Pharoah as they went in the backstretch, but the second quarter was faster, and he was ready to pounce early. Now, if he had waited a little longer to really put the pressure on American Pharoah to turn the screws, it might have been a slightly different result, but he moved early. He went after him. Even by the time they'd run 6 furlongs, Frosted was with American Pharoah. And like we said, each quarter was getting faster. American Pharoah, it's been said on that NBC broadcast that American Pharoah should have kind of opened the gap. But considering they ran the fastest mile in some 39 years of any Travers, the fastest mile by far in this century, it would have been hard for Pharoah to be too far ahead of Frosted, because Frosted was really putting his race in from the half mile to the mile marker. And that made American Pharoah work a little bit harder than maybe expected. Also, I think it should be pointed out, Matt, that the rail, I saw a few people mention it, and you could see it throughout the day, the rail was not really the place to be Saturday at Saratoga.
Yeah, and coming around the turn into the clubhouse turn, going around the turn was when Lescano really amped it up, moved Frosted. Now they were head and head, neck and neck, coming around the turn. American Pharoah was on the rail, and it got physical then. It wasn't just two horses running next to each other. They were bumping each other, and that is another way that the competitive juices in a thoroughbred get amped up. And now American Pharoah was in full competitive mode, competing, going fast.
Yeah, exactly, Matt. And you know, like we kind of said, it's more the competition, the head-and-head battle, rather than the fractions that I think bothers a horse on the lead or tires them out more. And certainly Frosted is a grade one horse, a grade one winner. And for him to be the horse that's going nose and nose with American Pharoah, especially in the middle of the race, not so close to the end of the race yet, probably created more of a reason for American Pharoah maybe to come up a little tired late. He really turned the screws on him. Meanwhile, American Pharoah, Frosted going at it. Keen Ice had a really nice trip after the first turn and was able to move up a little bit and be in a menacing move on the turn. By the way, Frosted's rider that really turned the screws on this, going into the far turn, on the turn, coming out of the far turn into the stretch. Lescano was not supposed to be Frosted's rider. You wonder if Joel Rosario, the regular rider, would have done anything different. You know, not to make excuses for American Pharoah, but maybe Lescano pushed a little bit harder than Rosario would have. So that's another thing that we at least should mention in the running of the Travers.
Yeah, and we should certainly mention also that Kieran McLaughlin has said in a couple of different instances, in a couple of different ways, that the way the race ran was not the plan that they had discussed before the race. And as Kieran said, they were expecting Frosted to be sitting back a little bit more, conserving a little bit more. And McLaughlin has said that at some point when Lescano recognized that nobody else was going to go with Pharoah, Lescano made a decision to go and go up after and not leave Pharoah alone, which in a lot of circumstances is probably a wise decision. And McLaughlin also added that it is a decision that Lescano has made on other of his horses that has worked out well. But they were running against American Pharoah here. And as they started to go down the stretch, it became clear that Pharoah was going to put away Frosted. And he did put away Frosted. That strategy didn't work. And at that point, I remember when I was watching the race, Brian, I now started to look back and see, where's Keen Ice right now?
Yeah, Frosted in essence did the dirty work. Now Lescano went 135 flat in a mile and a quarter race. That's fast, and he did it head to head with American Pharoah. Is that the best strategy to win the race? I could go both ways on it, Matt, because yeah, you don't want American Pharoah, the best horse in the race, the favorite, heavy favorite going into the race, to have things easy on the front end. He went at him hard, and in essence, he did the dirty work for horses that might be making a late run. That one horse that made the late run, of course, was Keen Ice. Keen Ice should be thanking, the connections of Keen Ice should be thanking Frosted for doing what he did. Frosted is a really good horse again, and for him to go head and head in 135 flat in a 10 furlong race with American Pharoah, that's softening things up. Frosted ran very well to finish third, but it was clear pretty quick after they straightened out and after he actually got ahead in front of American Pharoah that Frosted was not, once again, not going to be the better horse between him and American Pharoah. American Pharoah puts him away. Here comes Keen Ice. What were you thinking, Matt? At the eighth pole, I thought American Pharoah was going to win after Frosted started to fall back just a little bit, but that was short-lived as all of a sudden Keen Ice kind of surged.
Yeah, that's really exactly what my reaction was when I knew Frosted was put away. I thought, okay, now Pharoah is okay. But then just real quickly after I saw Keen Ice coming, I knew it was Javier on there. And Javier had been watching, sensing what had been going on the whole time. And, you know, he's one of the best riders in the country right now. He had it measured perfectly and ran him down. And when you got to watch the head on after the race, you saw how tired Pharoah was at that point, because as Espinosa was urging him, Pharoah started moving around, bearing out a little bit down the track, and that really showed it too. But you could tell with 100 yards left, 150 yards left, that there was going to be a little too much racetrack left, and that Keen Ice was going to get there.
And the reason Keen Ice got there was Keen Ice ran a huge race. It's one of the fastest Travers, second fastest in the 21st century. Point Given ran just barely, slightly faster, less than a fifth of a second faster. So this was a big performance by Keen Ice. I see a lot of people complaining that he's only won 2 of 11 lifetime. The same can be said of Frosted, 2 of 11. They're putting down American Pharoah. They're putting down the Crop. These are very good horses. Keen Ice is a late runner, and those horses often don't have the best record. But put them into a situation, say a pretty fast pace in, say, a 10 furlong race, say at a racetrack that is tiring if you're on the rail the whole way and pressured the whole way, like Saratoga is, going 10 furlongs for sure. He's a horse that's going to win it. He reminds me of a horse, we've seen a lot of these type of horses, but he reminds me a lot of a horse named Concern from about 20 years ago, who ran a big Travers to just miss against Holy Bull, who had things more his own way after the early first quarter pressure. But then he came back to win the Breeders' Cup Classic. Concern didn't have a great winning percentage, but he rallied in a lot of races for second, for third, for fourth, kind of like Keen Ice. He developed a little bit later in the year, kind of like Keen Ice, and give him the right setup, he's very tough. Keen Ice is a very good horse who ran a very good race. Frosted, I already said, ran a good race to stick around for a good third. And we got to give American Pharoah credit. If you're going to have an 8-race winning streak broken, Matt, I think this is kind of the brave performance that really doesn't take away, in my eyes, too much from American.
And I have to agree with you there, Brian. We need to remember, and as you said, people started knocking Pharoah right after the race. But let's remember some things that this horse has done. 1, Triple Crown winner, first one in 37 years. Don't forget also, if you want to go way back, this is a horse who broke his maiden in a Grade 1 race. How often does that happen? This is a fantastic horse. And you know, if you want to throw out the graveyard of champions, but you know, this race was kind of like a handicapping 101 race, where horse got in a brutal speed duel, head to head, everything taken out, and a really good setup, made his move, and won the race. And as I said in my Travers recap, let's remember, great champions get beat. They have all gotten beat, whether we're talking about Secretariat, or whether we're talking about Zenyatta, or whether we're talking about Cigar's winning streak coming to an end. They get beat. And American Pharoah got beat. He's still a great horse. I take nothing away from him. Nothing I ever said about him is changed.
Good point, Matt. Good point. I will say this about the speed duel, because I think some people are going to hear that and want to argue with you, but it was that middle part of the race where the speed duel developed, and it was really taxing, made it hard for American Pharoah. I agree with everything you say. You know, there have been plenty of horses in the history of racing that have retired undefeated. Most of them, not all of them, mind you, but most of them had a lot of easier races. They padded their schedule a little bit, if you will. That's not been true for American Pharoah. We should give a little credit to the fact that they're running in all the big races. For them to run in the Travers, arguably the 4th race in the Triple Crown series, if you will, was sporting. And they took their horse to a race that we didn't know if he was going to go to. They put him in a big test. And yeah, he ran a very good performance, but he got beat. Fair enough. By the way, Secretariat, in his second race, after winning the Triple Crown in unbelievable fashion, came to Saratoga. He ran against horses probably a little less heralded than we saw in the Travers, although they were older. Secretariat was stuck on the rail. He was pinned on the rail. He faded a little bit. It was the horse that was with him that actually beat him, the Frosted, if you will. That was Onion. No one came to him, but eventually Onion wore him down while Secretariat was pinned on the rail. And Secretariat faded just a little bit to get beat by 3/4 of a length. Sound familiar? I'm not saying American Pharoah is Secretariat, folks. Don't think I'm saying that, but he's a really good horse, Matt, and I agree. And this performance takes little away. Now, the good news, Matt, we heard today Jay Privman from the Daily Racing Form confirmed that he will not be retired. That was a question mark after the emotional loss. Immediately, Ahmed Zayat saying, well, maybe it's time to retire him after the loss. Emotionality aside, a few days to think about it. Baffert's told Privman that American Pharoah is going to not retire now. He's going to the Breeders' Cup Classic. Keen Ice is training up to the Breeders' Cup Classic. Frosted might run in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, but he is Classic pointed at least. I think all three of these horses demand attention in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and we're happy, especially that American Pharoah will be one of the horses represented in America's Richest Race.
Yeah, that's great news to hear that Pharoah's going to stay in training, because he seemed to come out of the race fine, and we've got something to look forward to over the next couple months.
I'll say American Pharoah is the master of bounce back. He doesn't seem to really lose too much after these races. People, said the travel and his schedule got to him at the Travers. I'm not completely buying that. Maybe 5% of the reason he lost, but yeah, if he can be 100% for the Breeders' Cup Classic, he's my horse to beat. Beholder, Honor Code, all the rest. That's the race we all want to see. And despite the loss in the Travers, I still want to see it.
No question about it, Brian.
All right, Matt. So, folks, that was our rundown, our analyzing of the 2015 Travers Stakes. I think everybody, except for maybe Jerry Crawford, Donegal, Dale Roman's team, is a little bit sorry that American Pharoah, the run had to end. But that's horse racing. We all learned, everyone can lose. American Pharoah lost. We still love him. Keen Ice is an up-and-coming horse that obviously is Grade 1 material. He'll be part of the Classic. We can't wait. Thanks for joining me today, Matt.
My pleasure, Brian. I'll see you again next week.
As always, we're brought to you by Horse Racing Nation and Derby Wars. Thank you, Ember Marr, for being our wonderful producer today.
Thank you, Ember.
We'll see you all next week.